Hi Steve, how you doing?
Hello there.
So we said we'd talk about communication today and kind of how it's misunderstood. It's not necessarily received the way we think we're going to do it, and how some of those tools that might help us communicate more effectively. You know, so hopefully we can give these wonderful people some ideas of our world in communication.
Yeah. Well, that is a really important topic, isn't it? Because
It is.
as communicating beings with very complex brains and very complex goings on in our world, we need good communications.
Yeah, it's surprising how many people, all of us really, don't use good communication. We tend to use communication with an with it's an emotional reaction communication. It tends to not necessarily be a thought out process, and is more of a defensive system than a communication system really.
Yes. Yeah. You're dead right. And the range of communications is huge, isn't it? It's not just a conversation. It is, as you say, behaviors, and it is also non-verbal, other non-verbal things that we do. Not to
Indeed.
not to forget unconscious communications.
Yep. Indeed.
So
Absolutely.
there's a lot to go at here.
There is, and we just assume that people are communicating, when in fact actually they probably aren't. You know, they're taking their own understanding of what that communication might be, filtered through their own world, their own experiences, their own hearing, you know, because obviously that's all different. So we might say one thing, but that might not be what people pick up, which can be really confusing.
Yeah, yeah, can be. Yeah, going back many years, I remember this diagram. It's just a very, I suppose, simple way of thinking about it. But there's a somebody giving out or transmitting the communication, and it's aimed at this other person, the receiver. But in the middle, there's this huge sort of filtering process going on. So it doesn't go from there to there. It goes through this filter, and as you say, it often gets mashed up in some way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like two filters, isn't it? I will have a filter that is my filter that it has to go through. You will then have a filter that it has to go through to get to you. You know, it's not easy to communicate, which sounds mad, doesn't it? There was a study, wasn't there, where they said that when people are actually communicating, that our brain is trying to make it up, is trying to fill in the gaps. If it doesn't recognise something, it gives us the closest that it can work out in order to fill it. Which sounds a bit mad, really, but it's a study that they've just done, I think.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. It's a bit like when you write a sentence, but you don't put any vowels in. You just use the
Mm,
consonants, but you know what the words are when you read it
mm,
because our brains fill in
yeah,
the gaps. But I suppose how our
yeah.
brain fills in the gaps is a very personal thing, isn't it? And we might fill
So
it
they
with
reckon. Yeah,
the wrong thing.
mm, yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
hear what we want to hear.
Indeed, absolutely. And our brains pick up what we are interested in or we are best associated with. So if me and you look through a window, the same window, we will see a different picture.
Yeah,
Now the picture's not different, the window is the window, but dependent on what we associate with will depend on which bits that we focus in on and which bits we remember. And when we're working with clients, and certainly when I'm working with couples, I become the kind of like person who interprets the thing from one person to another person to get an idea of what is actually being said. And sometimes people will react with emotions and react defensive because of their own stuff. And they then feel that they can't reply because they're being attacked with these words. And so when we're attacked, we naturally attack back. So when we get arguments working, we get arguments because we're not communicating. We're doing a tit for tat. We're doing a process of defending ourselves, kind of thing. And that can be really, really weird and hard to understand.
Yeah. So, uh, not to put you on the spot, but how do you help your couple clients work through that sort of thing?
Well, I kind of like take on board what each person's saying,
Mm,
and then I have to kind of bring them together in a way that takes out the white noise, if you like, the defensive mechanism, you know, that kind of pollutes it, or these filters that you were talking about.
yeah.
So I'll give you an example of that. I was working with somebody a long time ago now, and they were in the room working with me, and there was a consistent issue around smoking. And we used to get back into conversations about smoking. One was a smoker and one was not a smoker, you know. So one was saying, well, you do this, you do that, you do the other, and it's coming into this smoking, and you go outside and you don't connect to me, and you're withdrawing from me. Well, I do that because I need to get some time to think, and so there was this kind of a conversation going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards for a couple of sessions. To be fair, we kept getting into it. So I said to the person who was complaining about the smoking, is it the smoking? Or are you worried about that person's health? Are you worried about that person dying from cancer or whatever, COPD or whatever? And that conversation with me interpreting a different view of it, a different look of it, what is the reason for that piece of communication that keeps coming back and doesn't get solved? And they said, yeah, actually I am, because we've got young kids and I want this person, my partner, to be there for them when they grow up. So that moved the conversation massively and very dramatically, to be fair, because then the other partner was started crying. And they said, but you keep going on about me about smoking. Well, yeah, I do, but I'm worried about you. Because my dad died of cancer because of smoking. So there's all these filters in that person's head about life, about processing, about what smoking is, that was on board with all that and attacking that smoking idea, but not really getting for the reason the smoking was such a big issue.
Mm.
Now, once the other person realised that they cared about them so much they didn't want them to die, then the conversation about smoking actually disappeared. Because the person who was the smoker was kind of doing the I'm going to smoke, you're not going to tell me what to do kind of thing. So once there's that conversation happening with the interpretation I'd put on it, then that person and the other person came together with a both understanding that they didn't want to lose each other.
So the smoker thought possibly or interpreted these comments as a form of control, but actually it was all about their worry and anxiety about the harm and the future for them. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other person was unable to say that with the language because it was too vulnerable or too scary, or there was a fear involved in saying those words. But once we'd changed the dialogue and changed the focus or the context of it, then obviously it created a different process.
So one of the filters was that individual's way with emotional talk, perhaps not being able to express certain things, but you enabled that, you opened that up.
Yeah.
You remove the filter, in other words.
Yeah.
You saying that reminds me of couples where, and I'll give you a scenario from my own work. I'm usually working with sex or porn addicts, and this has been discovered or disclosed within the relationship. So the partner is experiencing quite significant betrayal trauma and so on. And if I work with a client for 6 months, they get into a good recovery, they will experience their partner lagging behind quite some way, even where they've had some support, because they're trying to deal with something that's probably gone a lot deeper than simply acting out for a long period of time and needing to stop. And my partner will, my client will be saying to me things like, well, he or she, they won't be intimate with me anymore. They won't, um, you know, they, I'm not talking about sex. I'm just, they won't hug me. They won't hold my hand. They won't want to sit on the sofa with me and have a date night and this sort of thing. And they'll say, I think they think it's over, because I've done this. They don't want to be here. And then I'll say, well, how else are they communicating their intimacy with you or their affection for you? Think about that. And they'll say, well, yeah, they're still here. We're still sitting down and talking about things. We're still functioning well together. We're still sharing childcare. He or she still checks in on me occasionally, says, how are you? It's all these sorts of ways of communicating going on, but they're not picking this up. They're not picking up the signals, because for them, communicating affection, communicating love is about physical intimacy and the sexual side.
Mm. Yeah. Which is highly confusing, isn't it?
It's way too subtle. And I really don't want to be sexist, but I think men struggle with this quite a lot.
Indeed.
Picking up the signals, the subtleties.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, from a male's perspective, and this is not an excuse, it's just the way we're conditioned to see the world growing up.
Yeah.
Big boys don't cry, get on with it, all that kind of work that says don't show your emotions. And a lot of guys, including me, I mean, it's different for younger kids nowadays coming up through school, because they are starting to have the language of emotions given to them. I mean, we didn't have the language of emotions. So how can you say something if you don't have the words?
No.
And if you look on a greeting card display in a shop, any shop really, when you go into the mail section, there's kind of like 4 topics on all the greeting cards. There's kind of drink, usually, or less so nowadays. There's drink. There's inappropriate humour, sexist language. There's sport, whatever that might be, or the sex. And pretty much that's it. No matter which card display you go on in the country, you will see those 4 topics. There's not a lot of emotional language, emotional content given out, So
No.
if we haven't got the language, how can we even have the conversation?
How can we even communicate? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so often we're working with grown-ups who are having to relearn some very basic things like listen, hear, think about how you're interpreting what is being sent to you, and then be empathic with that information and share it back with empathic communication. Yeah, it's quite hard.
It
is. I don't know. Do you think there's some science or biology involved? I mean, men don't take naturally to this, but women seem to be much better at it.
I think a lot of it is the growing up, is the conditioning that we
The
get.
conditioning, yeah.
Yeah, I think certainly in my era, it might be different now. I see it with my grandkids that it's a different process than I ever grew up with. That they do have a voice. They're given that opportunity to say how they feel, And these are like under 10-year-olds. But in my day, that wasn't the case. So from that point of view, that processing is, you've got to fix it, you've got to sort it, you've got to make it happen. That was given to me. Okay, I don't believe that nowadays, thank you. But it was given to me. And I held it for the first part of my life up to about 38, 40, when I started doing counselling and started coming into a different way of seeing the world. But that fix it process, if I couldn't fix it, I felt very scared. If I couldn't make it happen, there was an inbuilt fear in me that said, right, okay, you're not able to do that, so you must be redundant. You're going against what should happen in this world, in this universe. And I would get very fearful of not being able to fix. So I'd offer more solutions, offer more input to try and find something that would make it go forward. And it was the wrong thing. Certainly in a relationship, it was the wrong thing. Because my partner, at that time, my wife, they wanted to just be heard. They wanted me to listen. They didn't want me to fix, take charge, take control, give them solutions. They just wanted me to listen. But obviously I didn't do that. And that relationship pretty much ended because of that, to be fair.
Yeah. I do agree with you about the nurture. The way we brought up, at the role models we have, how we copy, mimic our mums and dads. But I think there's probably a great deal of nature in it too. Would it be fair to say that the female of the species is the one that usually looks after the baby and the infant, and they have evolved with better communication skills, with better picking things up, better with empathy, whereas the male of the human species has evolved to fix things, to find the food, to find the cave, to light the fire, to keep other tribes at bay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a nature and nurture. I don't think there's one or the other.
No.
But I think one supports the other.
Can I open up the topic of empathic communication? This is something you often see mentioned on couple therapy courses and other things, where we're in effect talking from the I, aren't we, rather than pointing a finger saying you are A, B, and C.
Yeah.
What's your version of it? I imagine it's very similar to the version I have. But how do you help clients to have a conversation with a partner who's they feel is having a go at them?
Yeah. It happens an awful lot in my world, definitely. It's kind of one of the things we have to first do with couple work is to get a communication working. Once some of the pain has gone for the conflict or whatever's going off, it's all about communication and effective communication, not just words, but effective communication, which there's a difference. And so you get this kind of targeting, this kind of attacking, this kind of producing you're the problem process, And when it happens in the room in front of me, and to be fair, what I try and do with any new couple clients is I kind of let the first 20 minutes or so of a session kind of looking at their communication styles, what is going on, So I don't interject, I don't interrupt. I might ask some questions to get the conversation going, but I'm looking at what's going on. I'm looking at the backwards and forwards, the dialogue, and how much of that blaming process is in there. And after about 15, 20 minutes, depends on the intensity, obviously. I won't let it go to be too intense because that would be abusive verbally abusive, and I won't allow that, obviously. But I'll then kind of bring in that aspect of, do you think that either of you is hearing each other?
Mm.
What did you just say in the last 5 minutes? What did you just say in the last 5 minutes? What were you talking about? What did you hear? So I'll do a small piece of work around that. And usually they're not listening because they've been targeted, they've been told they're a bad person, that whatever they've told them. You know? So I kind of say, would you prefer to do something else? Or, are you wanting to do this? There's a choice. Well, no, we don't really want to do this tit for tat, this argument, this bickering kind of a process. And I'll say to them, well, okay, we can stop that as from now. And they'll say, pardon? I'll say, we can stop it from now. This moment, we can stop this. You have a choice here of what words you use, how you use them. That is yours and your choice. But the process of the communication is that anybody on the planet who get told the this, the that, or the other, or they think this, or they think that, or they think the other, is going to come back defensive. And they're going to come back with, oh, no, I'm not, you are. That's the way it works. I said, so if we change our language, we will change the process quite naturally. So what I say to them is, say, right, okay, there's two words in the English language that will create the argument. There's loads of words after them, but there's two words that'll set it up. And they'll say, what's that? I'll say, you and your in a telling sense. If you use you and your in a telling sense, you're going to get an argument because you're not giving the other person an opportunity to have a position. You're telling them who they are, what they are, how they feel. Whatever it is, you're telling them. They have no way of coming back with anything other than, oh no, I'm not, you are. So I say, so you rearrange that and you say the you and your in an asking sense. And if you put you and your in an asking sense, then you cannot argue. It's absolutely impossible. And so we do some sort of work in the room utilising this process and seeing the difference. And I'll give them a couple of silly examples, I like silly examples because they highlight things easier, And I'll say, so if you're upset with somebody already and they came to you first thing in the morning and said, you're having a cup of tea, even if you wanted one, you won't have one because you've been told you're having a cup of tea. You ain't got a choice. If they came and said, would you like a cup of tea? Do you want a cup of tea? You've got options. No, I'd like a coffee. Yes, I'd like it upstairs, downstairs. Can you give me some bread, cereal, whatever? You've got input.
Yeah.
With that you and your, in a telling sense, you've got no input. And once they start doing that, and it doesn't happen just because I say it's a good idea, they still fall into bad habits. But then we have some fail-safes that I give them. That sort of says, well, okay, let's change it, let's move it. And if we can do that, then we can have conversations instead of arguments. And I think that, for me, is one of my first steps in work where there's arguments and communication difficulties, is getting people to communicate effectively and feel heard.
Yeah, I try and encourage clients to speak from the I more often. I'm sure this ties into what you're saying somehow. It's another way of replacing the you, isn't it? You are this, you are that, and instead saying, well, I am hearing, I am feeling, I experience this, which can take the heat out of it a bit.
It does.
And the point scoring and the escalation.
And they find out about each other again. Because their I process, which I use as well, gives them that opportunity to learn things about each other. How they feel, how they think, how they see things, or experience them.
Yeah, because they're saying what is happening for them. They're not just pointing a finger and blaming and accusing. Yeah. And the other thing that always fascinates me about communication is the unconscious side. What what people are communicating unknowingly. And we often use the word projecting. If we project how we're feeling inside through our words and behaviors, that lands on somebody else. So we might come across as being angry. We're having difficulty processing our own anger, so we project it onto somebody else. It's a sort of a clumsy way of getting somebody else to understand how we are feeling because we can't explain that, or if it's sadness or if it's something else.
Oh. But sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, Steve.
Don't know we're doing it. No. And sometimes these things can be very, very deep rooted.
Oh, yeah.
So people might be projecting, I don't know, product of a trauma they've had, or that it might be some rage from early years that's coming out in anger again.
Indeed. Which could be triggered in all sorts of ways, to be fair. I mean, one that I see constantly is one person will be speaking about something quite intense, emotionally intense, to another person in the room, and their body language, their facial features, are smiling. Now, they will not be aware of that, but they're sending a mixed message to the other person. This is really intense and this is really emotional and distraught, but I've got a smile on my face. Now, a lot of people do that subconsciously, obviously, as we're saying, but because they don't feel comfortable in showing their emotions in that way, so they want to put a light-hearted aspect to the conversation. They want to lift the mood, but they're saying something quite deep, and personal. So because the person that's receiving that sees these two frames, these words that give them this hurt and pain and whatever's going off, and this face that gives them smiling, it's not easy to understand. Which one are you telling me? Are you really telling me that this is painful, or are you actually trying to kind of take me and do something with me, manipulate me in some kind of a way, because I'm getting these two different sort of situations occurring? And so they don't take it necessarily with the respect or the value that it's being given. Now, when you bring that into the room and you say to that person, can I just hold on here a minute? What I'm seeing, I don't know whether or not this will be helpful, but what I'm seeing is this is being said and your facial features are saying that. Do you realise you're doing that? And what bit of that language are you trying to tell me? Are you telling me the pain, or are you trying to tell me the humour? Which? And mostly they don't know they're doing it.
No.
But the other person will look and interject and say, that's exactly what happens, and I don't know what they're trying to tell me. I don't know what they're trying to give me. And sometimes when I'm telling them something that is really deep and really emotional and I get the smile, sometimes I think, well, they're just ridiculing me.
Yeah.
Why would I even converse with that person? Why would I even interject with that person if they're not taking my pain and treating it with respect?
Wouldn't it be great if we could not do these things, not give out mixed messages, not give out dissonant signals from between our words and our facial expressions, if we could not have our communications being governed by unconscious things that are going on for us? Wouldn't it be great?
It would. I think people, though, get into very defensive processes when they're feeling hurt or they don't understand, or they're kind of like trying to make out what's happening in the world. We kind of protect ourselves, and I think sometimes that defensive system puts these kind of things in place that confuse us.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and it's a complex thing, unraveling it. in therapy, isn't it? And another complex thing to help somebody make a change and try a different way, because some of these communication habits are very well entrenched.
Yeah. Certainly if they're born of trauma, definitely,
Mm.
you know, because that is a massive defense system to keep me safe,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is one of the big benefits of doing couple therapy, isn't it? You have somebody else there in the room who can hear and see what's going on and have a different interpretation.
Yeah. And I think that's the richness of the couple counselling. Although it's not easy because we have to, in a sense, be vulnerable ourselves in that dynamic, because the two other people could have a go at us
Mm.
quite easily.
Mm.
You know, they could gang up on us. You know, protecting each other against this horrible counsellor kind of thing. You know, but I think that's why couple work works, because the counsellor, if they feel suitably qualified, comfortable to do it, to interject, then they can be the interpreter. They can be the kind of filter, if you like, of that process. And they can take this piece of information and say, yeah, I can see how you see it that way, but have you looked at it this way? You know? And that can make it a whole range of difference.
Mm. Yeah.
Because that perception that we all have is our reality, isn't it? You know, it's not the reality, it's
Nope.
our reality, but the other person has a perception that's their reality. So we kind of get in there and try and bring that together, try and bring that as an understanding. You know.
What do you think we should be talking about next time?
Oh, now you put me on the spot. I don't know. Have you got any ideas in your lists?
Well, I think some of the classic things that crop up in therapy will be interesting to talk about. Things like low self-esteem, low self-worth, a need for validation or anxiety, maybe depression.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing a much more bigger input of anxiety at the moment, certainly.
Yeah, it is a fearful place. Yeah. Okay, then we'll go with the anxiety topic. I'll see you next time.
Okay, Steve, take
All
care.
right, and you too.